Hello, my name is Noah Abji, and today we're going to learn how to divide decimals to quotients past the thousandths place, which means that the answer are going to have numbers in the 10,000s or 100,000s and so on. So let's get into it. So the first thing that we should talk about is comparing it to dividing decimals by whole numbers. And if you don't know long division, this will be a quick review of it, or if you don't remember it. So if we divide whole numbers using long division, we have to set it up in a box like this. So let's say we're doing 771 divided by 4. So remember, long division has 4 steps. The first is find the first number and divide it. So 4 goes into 7 one time. So we're going to put a 1 above this 7, the 7 that it goes into right here. 1 multiplied by 4 is 4. So we're going to subtract 4 from 7. 7 minus 4 is 3. And then we bring down the 7. Those are the 4 steps. You divide, multiply, subtract, and bring down. So let's repeat. 4 goes into 37 9 times. So we're going to put a 9 right here. Now multiply 9 by 4, and we get 36. Now subtract 37 minus 36, and we end up with 1. And finally, we bring down a 1 here. Now repeat this process. 4 goes into 11 2 times. 2 times 4 is 8. 11 minus 8 is 3. And we have nothing to bring down. So instead of saying remainder 3, since we're going to be talking about decimals today, let's actually continue dividing. And if you don't know how to continue after this point, if you have a remainder, this is how you do it. You add a decimal point in both your answer and the number, and just add zeros right here. So now you have a 0 to bring down. The reason why this works is because 771 is the same as 771.0. So when you add a 0 to bring down at the end, you're not changing the number you're dividing. Now 4 goes into 30 7 times, so we're going to put a 7 here. 7 multiplied by 4 is 28. And now if we subtract this 28, we end up with 2. Now we have to add another 0 since we have a remainder. So let's add one more 0. So now we have another 0 to bring down. So we get 20 here. And 4 goes into 20 5 times total. And 5 multiplied by 4 is 20. And finally, when we subtract, we get a remainder of 0. So this is how we know we finished the question. And all you have to make sure to do is put the decimal point in when you start adding zeros at the end. So our final answer for this is 192.75. I'll leave this on for a few seconds just to look at before I clear it away. All right, so dividing decimals, just like that example with the whole number, even past the thousandths place, is the exact same thing. We use long division, both with whole numbers and decimals. So here's an example. Let's say we wanted to do 1.02941 divided by 30. The first thing we're going to do is the same as if we're dividing a whole number. We're going to set it up into a long division question. All right, so let's write our numbers. So first we have 30 here. And then we have 1.02941. And I wrote these small in case we have to continue writing out. So what we should do in our answer is put a decimal point where the decimal point is in our number that we're dividing. Because remember, when we were dividing 771 by 4, just like this, when we started adding zeros at the end and added this decimal point, we also put it in our answer. So that's how the decimals and long division work. All right, so we put the decimal point here. Now 30 goes into 1 0 times, so we're going to put a 0 here. Now 30 goes into 10. Instead of 1.0, we can think of this as 10. 30 goes into 10 0 times as well, so we put another 0 here. Now 30 goes into 102, and you can imagine that the decimal point actually isn't here once you put in your answer. So 30 goes into 102 3 times total. 3 times 30 is 90. And And now we're going to do 102 minus 90. So 102 minus 90 is 12. And again, you can ignore this decimal point. In fact, as soon as we put it in our answer, we can just erase the decimal point. And just imagine we're dividing this number. And just keep the decimal point in our answer. So 30 goes into 102 3 times. 3 times 30 is 90, and when you subtract that, you get 12. And now we just continue this process and keep bringing down numbers. So 30 goes into 129 4 times. 4 times 30 is 120, and now we subtract. 129 minus 120 is 9. Now we bring down a 4. 30 goes into 94. So 30 goes into 94 3 times. 3 times 30 is 90. And we can do 4 minus 0 is 4. So now we're going to bring down this 1. All right, so we bring down the 1. And now 30 goes into 41 1 time. So 1 times 30 is 30. And now we have 11. And since we have nothing left to bring down, we can keep adding zeros to the end and bringing them down. So 30 goes into 111 3 times. 3 times 30 is 90. And we subtract, and then we get 21. 21. And finally, we do bringing down this 1, or this 0, and 30 goes into 210 7 times. So we put a 7 here. 7 times 30 is 210. And finally, when we subtract, we get a 0. So we use the exact same process, except since we already had the decimal point right here, we don't add it when we start adding zeros. And we put the decimal point in the exact same place. It's like a number. If I'm dividing this 1, I put the number above the 1. If I have a decimal point here, I put a decimal point in the answer. So all you have to make sure to do is carry that decimal point into your answer where it should go, and then you'll be able to divide decimals just like whole numbers with long division. So now let's do some review questions, and I'll get this off the board. So here are some review questions with dividing decimals, and you'll get quotients past the thousandths place. If you'd like to try it, I'll give you a few seconds to pause this video before I explain the answer. All right, so the correct answers to these questions were 1.23175 and 0.1152. So let's start with the first one. Just like normal, we're going to set it up into a long division question. So we're dividing by 8. So the number that goes inside our box is 9.854. 9.854. So first, remember your steps. I like to write DMSB, just to remember them sometimes. They stand for divide, multiply, subtract, and bring down. So let's divide our first number. So 8 goes into 9 1 time. And remember, we draw the decimal point where it is in what we're dividing. So we draw it right here. So 8 goes into 9 1 time. Now we multiply. 1 times 8 is 8. We subtract. 9 minus 8 is 1. And we bring down. So we bring down this 8 here. 8 goes into 18 6 times. 6 times 8. Oh, sorry, not 6 times. 8 goes into 18 2 times. So 2 times 8 is 16. 18 minus 16 is 2. Now we're going to bring down this 5. Now, one important thing about long division is to make sure to keep your work organized. When you bring down numbers, make sure you don't have arrows going everywhere, and make sure you're drawing your numbers right above where they should be, because sometimes it's hard to keep track of everything if you draw arrows and numbers not properly lined up with where they should be. So this is why it's important to draw the decimal point in all the numbers above what numbers you're dividing. So now, since we're dividing the 5, since we just brought it down, 8 goes into 25 3 times. We draw a 3 right above the 5. 3 times 8 is 24, and 25 minus 24 is 1. And now we bring down this 4, and that is 14. So 8 goes into 14 1 time. So 1 times 8 is 8. subtract. 14 minus 8 is 6. So now we're going to put a 0 here. And remember, since we already have a decimal point, we don't need to add one. We can just add zeros to the end until we get our answer. So we put a 0 and bring it down. 8 goes into 60 7 times. 7 times 8 is 56. And 60 minus 56 is 4. And finally, add another 0. Bring it down. We get 40 at the bottom. 8 goes into 40 5 times. 5 times 8 is 40, and we end up with 0 left as our remainder. So this is when we know we're done. So our final answer was 1.23175, which is what's right here. All right, I'll give you a few seconds to look at this before I erase it and move on to the next question. All right, so for the second question, we have 0.576 times 5. Now, don't let this 0 here scare you. Even though we're not starting with, even though we don't have any number to the left of the decimal point besides 0, we can still do long division the same way that we've been doing it. Put your decimal point where it is, above where it is in what you're dividing, and just start with the first number. So our first number is a 0, but that's okay. 5 goes into 0 0 times. So we're going to end up with a number that's 0 point something. And that's exactly what it should be. So now what we do is we ignore the decimal point. In fact, sometimes after I move it up, I just like to erase it and say, how many times does 5 go into 5? 5 goes into 5 one time, so we put a 1 here. 1 times 5 is 5. So now we subtract, and we get 0 at the bottom. Now bring down the 7. 5 goes into 7 one time, so we put a 1 here as well. 1 times 5 is 5. So we multiply, now we subtract. 7 minus 5 is 2. Now bring down the next number, the 6. 5 goes into 26 5 times. So 5 times 5 is 25. Subtract, and we get 26 minus 25 is 1. Add a 0, because we can do that now since we already have the decimal point in our answer, so we don't need to put a decimal point here. And let me actually erase that. So now we bring down the 0 to get 10. And 5 goes into 10 2 times total. 2 times 5 is 10. And when we subtract, we get a remainder of 0. So our final answer is 0.1152. Now we use long division for all of these questions. It's the exact same steps as when we're using it for regular numbers. We get to add zeros to the end if we need. We get to move the decimal point up from where it should be, and you'll end up with the correct answer. So you can just use long division with decimals, even for quotients past the thousandths place, like these ones. That's all, and thank you for watching.